Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast, the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions, the worlds of TV, film, news, pop culture, sports, music, everything really. Depending on the guest, we talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Permiotis. On social media, you know me as PD Beats. My guest is an actor who is in tons of amazing TV shows and films over the years. The Harry Potter movies, The Patriot, so many shows as well, Star Trek Discovery, and he has a movie that's going to be coming out that's highly anticipated called Mass. Jason Isaacs is with us. Jason, welcome to Popternative.
Good morning. I've been in many good things over the years, but many bad things also, and quite a few mediocre ones.
It's interesting because, you know, there's a lot of amazing things you've been in, and a lot of those big projects that you worked on were kind of before the big kind of social media boom where everyone was kind of tweeting about a lot of things.
I've been an actor for 33 years. It was before the people had phones.
Yeah.
Mobile phones, never mind smartphones, yeah.
But it's interesting because this new film, Mass, that comes out, you know, there's a lot of, you know, there's the art that's coming on at Sundance, and there's a lot of kind of articles about it. And there's this like buzz. Do you find that kind of interesting that now, like what would it have been like with social media, with The Patriot and with Peter Pan, right? Like it's interesting to think about, right, Jason?
What would Nazism have been like with social media? It's impossible to go back and know. I do know that I've been in films that have played very well at festivals before, and there is such a thing as festival fever. Well, those things are normally contained to the main street in Park City, Utah. And now when there is a buzz about a film, it suddenly spreads worldwide. And the good thing about that is the film you're talking about is a very little film, very low budget, and it's playing at Sundance, but it's not coming out anywhere in the world yet. And so this, the fact that some seeds have been planted and created interest worldwide is helpful because, you know, it's tough for those little films to get audiences, get attention, and consequently for people to make them because they often don't get their money back. So it's nothing but helpful, frankly, that this incredibly human story might find eyes and ears all over the world because of social media.
Do you find as an actor and a storyteller, because that's what I like to call people like yourself, Jason, that's what you do. Sure. You are a storyteller. Do you find it kind of interesting where, like you mentioned, a lot of people haven't seen the film, but there's kind of these articles that are popping up about it, and there's kind of this anticipation, and you're kind of just on the other side where you made this film, but we're not sure about what the reception is going to be like. There's a little bit of buzz here and there, but like a lot of people have not seen this film. What's that kind of calm before the storm like for you?
Oh, well, that's the same anytime you make anything. There's no difference. I mean, you don't know whether when you make something and you all just concentrate on the creative process, there's always a slight undercurrent of fear, particularly in the people who put money into it or spent years, like Frank Kranz, the writer-director of this, into realizing their dreams or telling this story they're so burning to tell, that there's the possibility that nobody will ever see it, or hardly anyone will ever see it, particularly when things came out in the cinema and there weren't the streaming outlets nowadays. You know, I've been working on projects that I was very fulfilled by and I thought were great. Sometimes they would even go to Sundance and get rapturous receptions, and then they just wouldn't come out anywhere ever. Mm-hmm. And I can't imagine how heartbreaking it is. Or they'd come out and they'd come out in 12 screens and close by Monday morning. Yeah. So, you know, this is the experience of making little films, independent films, and in some ways, one of the very, very tiny positive side effects of the pandemic is that little films have a chance to breathe and be seen, albeit on streaming services, because the gigantic movies aren't swamping them and filling all the multiplexes.
Without like spoiling anything, can you talk a little bit about what we can expect from Mass and a little bit about what this story is all about?
Sure. Well, I'm aware, look, it's not coming out yet.
No.
There are various people who want to buy it, and somebody will choose to buy it and distribute it and publicize it. And you say without spoiling it, the ideal way to see a film, the reason I'm bummed that we're not going to Sundance this year, apart from the fact that, you know, it's a lovely little ski town where a bunch of thespians and directors get to hang out, is that some of my greatest film experiences have been there, and it's because someone will hand me a ticket to a film, and I'll walk in at midnight or whenever the hell it is, and the room will go dark, and I have no idea, just none, what's about to happen, who's in it, what it's about, anything, and I get a story told to me. So anytime you tell people about a story, you're ruining some of the value of it. Well, if you tell people about a Marvel story, or I was just in an exploding volcano movie, Skyfire, it doesn't matter. They still get to watch the volcano blow up and all the other things happen. In Mass, there's no exploding volcanoes and there's no aliens, there's no wizards. It's a human story, and all the things that happen between the people are the story.
Yeah.
So it's hard to talk about it. On the other hand, I find it inconceivable that anyone will buy a ticket without knowing what it's about. So you're right. I have to say something. But this is a word. If any reviewers are listening to this, stop telling the story in reviews of our film and any film. Stop telling the story.
Are you noticing though that there's a lot of like
all the time?
Yeah.
I've read 1,000 reviews. You're right. The film is getting justifiably. It's a brilliant piece of work, not from me, but from the writer-director, and it's getting fantastic universal acclaim in millions of outlets, and they're all telling the story.
Yeah.
And it will still be a huge emotional experience for anyone who watches it, but please don't do that if you're writing a review. Anyway, it's about 4 people who meet in a room and talk over a terrible trauma that has in many ways ruined all their lives in different ways. They're 2 couples, and my wife and I in the film, Martha Plimpton and I, our son was killed in a school shooting years ago, and it has destroyed us. And we blame, in many ways, the people we're meeting who are the parents of the shooter. And we want something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if we want to see them suffer. Do we want to forgive them? Do we want to see their pain? Do we want a reason? There's different things we think we want. A therapist has advised us to come because we haven't been able to get through it. So that's ostensibly what it's about. It's based on real meetings that happen. And I know the writer-director was inspired also by the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But to me, that's not what it's about. Because if it's a film just for people who lost kids in a school shooting, that's a very, very small, albeit necessary audience. It's a film about the nature of forgiveness and hatred and contact. See how to rise above or let go of the things that hold us back. And in many ways as well. Oddly for me, it was a film about marriage. It's about communication. It's about seeing each other and hearing each other.
For sure. And I do have to say,
if that doesn't sound dramatic, I just want to say to anyone listening who might think they might want to watch it, it's a positive film, albeit it's painful. But I don't know anyone who's watched it that hasn't had a massive emotional experience, bigger than when the aliens arrive, and bigger when the volcano blows up. It's a huge film in a tiny shell.
Do you think though that there's not maybe like a duty, but like you as the actor and storyteller, right? Where you're trying to like you said, you know what I mean? It has to do with a school shooting, but it's about the marriage and the relationship. Do you see is that kind of do you talk with the directors and writers and be like, hey, how are we gonna make it just focus on the people, and then the school shooting something kind of in the background? Like, what's that process like? I'm curious about
That's the film. The film is about people years later meeting in a room.
Yeah.
The events of the past are the events of the past. I've played a lot of soldiers, and I know and have been privileged enough to spend time with soldiers with PTSD who are talking about it and do some PTSD projects. The thing that has made them who they are happened a long time ago. The question is, how can they move forward in life? Mm-hmm. This is the question in this film. It's nothing to do with the incident. The incident could have been many different things. Sure. It's how do you move forward? How do you not be crippled by your baggage? Mm-hmm. And how do you see and hear each other? How do you free yourself from things that are destroying you and not destroying the people you're carrying hatred for?
Oh, for sure.
And how do you move on when there are things that will never be answered?
Yeah. When
you have questions that you think that the answers will free you, but actually it's letting go of the questions that will free you. That's what the film's about. So did we talk about it? He wrote a brilliant script about people in 2000 and whenever the hell it's meant to be, 20. And we just let what happens in the room unfold. That's where the drama is.
Those I feel like are the movies that I love watching, the dialogue movies. I love dialogue. I feel, is it safe to say now that because, of so many things kind of happening and, we want to kind of see stories about kind of the human interaction, the people talking and because I feel like, I think of a movie like Marriage Story on Netflix, right? Which was with Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, right? That was a movie that really made me want to watch those movies where it's just 2 people kind of talking. That's why I think I'm excited about Mass too, because of that. Do you think we're kind of that's a trend in cinema and TV now, these dialogue driven kind of movies?
No, I think that's always been there. There's we want a variety of things. Like I said, I was just in a film called Skyfire, which is a big old-fashioned disaster movie with exploding volcanoes and people escaping the lava. And I think it's fun to see those things. They're mindless and escapist fantasy. But I also think we made 12 Angry Men. My Dinner with Andre. There's always been films about the human condition that are more intimate and nuanced and powerful. Absolutely. And all stories, when they're good stories, well told, first of all, grip you. You have a big old experience. You feel like you've gone somewhere. You've had this cathartic journey. You haven't had to leave your couch, but you feel like something big has happened to you, which is why one of the reasons we love stories. And they work on you subliminally. Yep. If you ever feel like you're being told a message in a story, then you'll switch it off or do something else or walk out of the cinema. So there's room for all kinds. But the difficulty in recent years has been that those smaller stories haven't been able to find the audience. The audience, when they find them, love it, but they're just, if you're a multiplex, you'd rather run Titanic.
No, for sure.
30 years ago, but you'd rather run a Marvel movie than you would run a film that may only have an audience for a couple of weeks in a smaller cinema. But now, what's great the last year, Netflix, Amazon, Apple, and many other, Hulu and other people have been streaming intimate stories too to fill up the airways.
But it's actually a good segue. I want to also mention, I mean, I'm a big fan of horror movies. You have worked in the horror genre, Look Away, Cure for Wellness. I actually saw Cure for Wellness in the theaters, like the first couple of days it came out, and I kind of got out of that theater kind of feeling kind of weird and uncomfortable because I feel like have you kind of noticed that genre has kind of taken off because there's more ways to scare people as well, Jason?
I think that all genres have taken off. What have you been doing the last year? I've been doing not much, and there's a lot more watching of stuff than I ever did before.
I'm talking about a 5-year period too of horror too, right? I just find there's just been a huge thing. Yeah.
I think genre films have been doing well generally for a long time because there's an audience for them. I mean, look, that I was saying earlier, there's a kind of undercurrent, a tide of fear on every project you ever do, which is, maybe nobody's going to see this. Maybe nobody's going to buy a ticket. Maybe we're all wasting our time and money. Maybe it's never going to be bought. And one of the ways you can mitigate against that is by picking a genre that traditionally works. It's why it's so wonderful and brave when people make things like The OA, which is on Netflix, which defies genre completely. But if you make a horror film or you make a rom-com or something, there are people, which category you fall into. I've got a 15-year-old who adores horror films. And one of the great pleasures over the last year and a bit has been that when we can get the TV to ourselves and the others are away, we sit and watch horror films late at night. And it's been a joy rewatching some of my favorite old horror films. Yeah. And you could do them often on a limited budget. Mm-hmm. Great horror films are often limited budget.
Did you have a chance to see Host on Shudder yet about the Zoom call?
I did. I loved Host. I've seen it 3 times.
We interviewed the cast, and I still don't understand how they got some of the shots they got. I still don't get it.
Yeah, it's superb. I feel they might be being disingenuous about how they all just did it themselves. I think there's a crew, and they went to houses, and they definitely had a VFX department and stuff. But nonetheless, if anyone listening to this hasn't seen Host, watch it by yourself on an iPad in bed with all the lights off.
Absolutely.
I would always say that all films are better on the big screen, but Host you should actually watch on whatever device you use Zoom on.
Oh, for sure. And before we wrap up quickly, another thing too, I mentioned at the top, Harry Potter. You were in the Harry Potter movies. I just wanted to also mention, it's one of those things where the book was a big, I remember when the first book, when The Philosopher's Stone came out, it was a big deal. The Harry Potter was a big deal. But the movies just took it to a completely different level. What was that kind of for you working on that amazing franchise? But did you kind of have an idea that it was going to be as big as it got? Because the books had a little bit, a lot of people were saying, no, I had no idea. But the books were a big deal when they came out.
Well, when I did the first film, I wasn't in the first, I was in Chamber of Secrets, which is film number 2. It was just another job, and it was nice to be in it. But, the first film had come out and done okay, but it didn't mean the next one was going to do okay. Yeah. And, mostly my experience all the way through was that it was a job, a lovely job. I liked the people around me. I was in awe, frankly, of the kind of aristocracy of British acting around me, and that they might even know my name because these were people that I worshipped. By the time it got to, I then wasn't in number 3. I went off and shot Peter Pan. By the time it got to number 4, it was pretty clear, I think, that if people didn't, if they didn't blow it, they were all going to be successful. All the books were going to be adapted. They were going to make all the books weren't written. I didn't know if I was going to be in them. But actually, that doesn't fundamentally change. Shooting Harry Potter was exactly like shooting Mass. Mass was shot in one room in a church in Idaho for 25 cents, and Harry Potter might have been gazillions. But in the end, my job is the same. I'm not part of a franchise. I don't make lunchboxes. I'm not there when they decide to build a theme park. I'm just on a set with other actors trying to make a scene come to life. And what was amazing about Harry Potter is that we were all fans, and the creative process felt as free, even free to improvise in, as when we were making low-budget films. And that's one of the reasons they turned out so successfully, I think. No one felt the weight of anything. We were just telling a story.
Wow. No, that's amazing. Well, I had to get Harry Potter in there for sure. But Jason, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming on Popternative.
No, thanks very much. Listen, it's a tiny film with a massive footprint. I hope that people get to see this film because it's one of those things that can actually make you feel different about life.
And for people that, and you are active on social media, people can follow you on social media as well?
They can. I'm active. Sometimes I go months without even opening the app, but I'm at Jason's Folly on Twitter because when I first started it, I thought it was a stupid thing to do. So at Jason's Folly, and then on Instagram, when I post once every 6 months when my children kick me up the arse, I am the real Jason Isaacs.
Absolutely. Well, seriously, thank you so much. And no, it was a pleasure to speak to you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, this has been Popternative, youtube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. Until next time, this is Jason Isaacs and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.